Hello everyone, my name is Abhishek and in this video we're going to discuss about three important concepts in JavaScript and Node. So one is closure and then asynchronous sync and await functions and then promises and then we'll implement a to-do list using closures. So firstly let us see what is a closure. A closure is nothing but it's a function that will remember and access the values that are beyond its scope. So for example, uh, if you see this function and it has a variable called count, so that's a local variable to this function. But if we see this function is embedded within this outer function, right? So as you can see, this increment function is child of this parent function. That is, if you consider this as an outer function, this function is inner function. So the specialty of this inner function is this function can access the value that is outside its scope. So this count variable is actually outside of this inner function, right? But still it can access the value that is outside of this function and it can retain the value. That is between each function calls, it can remember the value that is stored inside this variable. So how does this exactly work? So whenever a function is declared and variables are declared, the JavaScript usually declares these variables and creates a memory space for this in the memory. So a reference is created, right? So that reference is used by the inner functions. So whenever an inner function want to utilize this variable that is declared outside of its scope, so it uses the reference to that variable and manipulates it. So that's why this inner function can access the variables and still maintain that state information. So now let us see an implementation of this closure. So firstly, I've created a counter program. So this is the outer function and these are the inner functions. So the outer function is create counter and then inner function is increment and then reset. So the increment function will increment the value of the count with among between each function call, and then reset function will set the value back to 0. And then I'm returning these two functions as arguments. So these two functions can be accessed outside with a variable or with an object. So and then I'm creating an object here with the for the main function create counter. So this counter function is initialized with this object, and then I'm just logging the type of that function, and using this object I'm incrementing the value. So firstly I'm calling this inner function with this object. So this initially the count is set to 0, right? Now after this first function call, the value is incremented by 1, and then I'm calling this once again. So again the value is incremented, and then I'm calling the reset function. So the value should be set back to 0, and then once again I'm calling the increment function. So once again the value is incremented. So if you consider the flow, initially this count is 0. After this function call, the value will be 2, and after I call this function, the value is 0, and then once again the value will be incremented, so the value should be 1. So let us run this. So as you can see, initially count is 0. After the first increment function, the count value is 1, then 2, and then I've reset the value, and then I have incremented it once again, so the value is 1. So that's how closures work. And then next concept is callbacks. So what is a callback function? Callback function is nothing but it's a function that is passed as an argument to another function. So why do we need callback functions? So when you are working in a asynchronous environment, we need some sort of surety, right? So we need some sort of output after an execution of a particular execution. And not only that, when we are dealing with asynchronous functions, uh, and then we don't know how much time a particular function works, and then we need to call a function back. So for example, there's a function named function a, and it executes for a particular amount of time, and then we want to call immediately a function. So to make sure that works properly, and even if some sort of errors occur and if you want to deal them properly, so we use callback functions. So as you can see, uh, I want to the main objective of this program is I want to order a pizza. Once the pizza has been ordered, I want to eat that pizza. So order pizza is the main function. It will order the pizza. As you can see, the pizza has been ordered. Wait for a few seconds, and then I've set a timeout function here. So I've set a timeout for 5 seconds. So after that 5 seconds, the pizza will get ready, and then I want to call back this function. So eat pizza. So if I call this function, it will output eating pizza. So want to order pizza first. So I want to call the main function. Then I'm passing this eat pizza function as a callback function. So once this main function gets executed, this callback function will be executed. So I'm passing this eat pizza as a callback function. So after the execution of this order pizza function, I'm calling this callback function. So this function will be executed immediately. So let us see the execution. Firstly, I'm ordering the pizza. Let me run this. So I've ordered the pizza. Now I'll wait for 5 seconds. So after 5 seconds, the callback function will be called. So initially I've ordered the pizza. We're gonna wait for 5 seconds, then we'll output pizza is ready, and then we're calling this function. So this function will output pizza is ready. So as you can see, eating pizza. No, no, no. So that's the output. So that's about the callback functions. And next we have promises. So promises in JavaScript are nothing but it's a guarantee that is provided by the JavaScript that some sort of output will be produced after execution of something. So promises are mostly used for dealing with asynchronous functions. So whenever we are dealing with asynchronous function, we need to get some sort of output, right? So a promise is nothing but it's a guarantee that is given by the JavaScript. So after execution of a particular function, some sort of output will be produced, and we'll have a means to deal with that output. So as you can see, this is the promise. It's an object, and it uses a function. As you can see, there's an arrow function, and it has two arguments, resolve and reject. If at all the execution of a function is successful, we'll send an acknowledgement using this resolve keyword, resolve argument. So as you can see, I'm sending a message here. And if at all function fails somehow, and we want to deal with that, so we'll send an acknowledgement and deal that with this reject function, reject argument. So as you can see, this code works by ordering a book, and if that book is in stock, it will resolve it. If at all it's not, if at all that book is not in stock, then we'll send this message as a rejection. So we have two more functions here, then and catch. So if a function resolves, that means if the function is executed successfully, this will be mapped to here. So resolve will be passed to this then function. This message will be passed here, and we'll log this message. If at all the function gets rejected, that means if it gets any error, then we'll handle that using catch. We'll handle this error. Now let us see how this is gonna work. Let me set this value to true first. So firstly, I want to order a book, and this function will check whether the book is in stock. If it is in stock, my book will get shipped. Otherwise, it will send me this message. So let me run this program. Looks like I got an error. Wait, let me run this once again. So yeah, as you can see, since my book is in stock, I've got this message, your book has been shipped. Now let me set this value to false. Now we should get this message. Sorry, the book is out of stock. So as you can see, we got this message. The book is out of stock. So that's the concept of promises. Next, next we have async and await. So async and await functions, the not functions, but async and await are used to deal with asynchronous functions. So as we already know, Node is an asynchronous scripted language. So when we are dealing with asynchronous, and we would need to know the flow, that means how the functions are executed, and want to deal them properly. So async and await functions are used to execute asynchronous functions in a synchronous fashion. So as you can see, we have this async keyword. So this keyword declares a function as an asynchronous function, and then we have this await keyword. So what await keyword does is it will make a function to wait until an actual function finished its execution. So the next part of the code will be executed. So as you can see, I've declared a function fetch data. So it will run for maybe like 5 seconds. I've set a timeout. After 5 seconds, it will send a resolve. It will send an acknowledgement. This is a promise actually, as you can see, resolve and reject. So inside this main function, I'm creating a new promise, and within that promise, after 5 seconds, I'm resolving this. So data will be received back to this function, and then I've created a fetch get data function. So after the execution of this fetch data function, we're logging this data. As you can see, the resolve will send the data to here, data function fetch data. So we have declared this function as an asynchronous function. So and then we have declared this function to await until execution. So until only after the execution of this function will be executed. So let us see let us see. As you can see the output. So initially we're calling this function get data, as you can see. So this function will produce this output fetching data, and after that we're calling this function. We are declaring this as an await function. So after execution of this function only, the rest of the code will be executed. So the fetch data will wait for 5 seconds. So after that it will resolve. That means it will send an acknowledgement to this data. So this message will be passed to data, right? And then we are printing the data. Let me run this once again. So fetching data. So it will wait for like 5 seconds. And after that, we'll receive the data. So that's how async and await functions work. And then next, we need to implement a to-do list using closures. So as you can see, so this is the implementation of a to-do list using a closure. So this is the outer main driver function, and then we are creating an array to store the tasks. And this array will be accessed by all these internal inner functions. So they can manipulate this array, they can add tasks or they can remove tasks and then view tasks. So as you can see, I've declared three functions here. One is add tasks, so this will push the task into this array, and then we have this remove task. So this remove task will remove the tasks from the array, and then we have view tasks, so it will iterate to the loop and then produces shows all the tasks that are inside the array. So then we are returning these functions so that we can manipulate those functions or use those functions using an object. So initially I'm creating an object to-do list using this function. So the array will be declared and initialized, and then I'm adding tasks. I'm adding three tasks: eat, sleep, and repeat. And then I'm viewing the tasks. That means I'm calling this function three times with different set of arguments, and then I'm calling this function. Calling this function actually, and then it will view all the tasks, and then I'm removing this task it. After that, I'm viewing the tasks once again, and once again I'm removing the task sleep, and then I'm viewing the tasks once again. So let me run this program. So initially, I'm pushing these three tasks into the task array, right? So as you can see, I've pushed them, and since I called the view tasks function, we got this output, and then I'm removing the task kit. So I have removed the task kit, and then once again I'm calling the view tasks function, right? So these are the remaining two tasks, and then I've removed sleep once again, and then this is the rest of the array. So that's how a to-do list is implemented in JavaScript using closures. So thank you for watching.